I want to get into our podcast feature. And our podcast feature, I think this will be Craig Lewis's third time being our podcast feature. But there's a very good reason for this being the feature. One, Craig and I tried to do this recording like a month ago, maybe it was 3 weeks ago, and we did the live. We did a live on Substack, and he was having technical difficulties on his end, so he forgot to hit the record button. So we did the whole podcast, but it fell apart, and then we rescheduled. And I said that'll be good. Let's reschedule for after my 2 races, because maybe I'll have something more to talk about, and we did. But unfortunately, this is the only negative side of this. We connected with the live yesterday, and it looked like things were going to go well. And then I've talked about how bad my system is in terms of like speed and ability. I'm surprised every time I cut a podcast with this thing that it goes to the next podcast. Well, we get into the live feed, and it just, every screen that I have froze to the point where I had to hard reset, and getting it back up from a hard reset takes time. It takes a lot of time. So I quickly ran upstairs, grabbed my earbuds for my phone, and I did this through my cell phone. So unfortunately, the thing I most regret about this is the audio quality wasn't the greatest. I set my phone up against my laptop, and I think the audio was reverberating a little bit. So despite that, especially if you're listening to this on audio, that might be a little distracting. But despite that, he and I had a great interview. It's always a privilege to talk with him, and I love when I get time to listen to his podcast, because in terms of the running community, he's been doing this whole idea of average people doing incredible things. That concept, he's been doing it for years. I come along and I'm doing my own version of this Uncredible thing, which, I had this idea back in 2016, and here he is across the pond, so to speak, doing the exact same thing for specific to running. So my running component is just a part of it. But it's exciting to see that we both have this vision and this passion. And what I wanted to do for the podcast feature specifically is I wanted to share a couple of clips that I really thought they were really great. And again, I wish the audio had come out better, but all the technical issues were on me this time. So I one of these days, maybe in a year or something, who knows? Whenever Craig wants to, we'll do it again. But we'll get it right. I'll get a better computer that can handle it, whatever. But this first clip is from that interview, and what I want to do is I want to share the clip, and then I'll give some of my thoughts on it. So here is this first one is we're talking similar to what I was already talking about, but about how running affects your everyday life, and specifically to average people, it does change you. And so that's what he and I are talking about here.
And for a solid mile, I was terrified I might keel over and freeze to death. And then it just went away, and then I got to the second half, and you're like, oh, I'm on the back half now. And then it was like, oh, look what I did. But in that moment, I was genuinely, like, my body was afraid. And I just had to tell it, like, don't be ridiculous. Like, you'll be fine. Or you won't.
But it is true when you get to other things in your life and you sort of need to push through there, you will have developed through running the ability to push through those situations. And although they may not directly correlate to whatever's happening in work or with your family or getting stuck on the motorway for 2 hours like I did earlier this week, you kind of just, this too will pass thing. And if I keep moving forward, I'm probably going to be all right, just like you were on that run, and just as I'm sure that deal was as well.
And that's kind of the ticket, right? Knowing what running does, it puts you in a situation where you experience those mental and emotional challenges where you're like, oh, I don't know if I can keep going. And then you find out that you can keep going. And each time you do that, whether it's on a long run or a series of runs over the course of months and years, the little things in life, the stressors in life tend to fade away. And that's what he and I were talking about, just how running makes you comfortable or puts you in those stressful situations that trigger the same body responses, to where, my example, which I didn't have in that clip, he uses the motorway, getting stuck on the highway. I use the example of dishes. Like, for some people, having too many dishes to do is stressful. When you start running, it does change you in a way where those things they don't affect you in the same way anymore. And it's truly evident. Like, you do feel that. And so, like, one of the reasons why I encourage people to run so much, and it's not just running, I'm sure any physical activity would do this, but putting your body through planned, organized, intentional stress and difficulty, it teaches your body to react to those situations. And so, like, for me personally, like, there's a lot of things at work that used to really stress me out and frustrate me that I just kind of rolls off my back, because I just think to myself, you've been through worse things, harder things. I just started working these 12-hour shifts. In order to do that, I have to go back out to a job that I used to do. The last time I did it was 2.5 years ago. And in the course of like 2 days of working 4 hours out there, I was back to doing the job again. But I remember the panic that I had each time, like, I screwed something up. That's not there anymore. Like, it happened to me a couple times, like last week, when I screwed something up and I was like, oh. But, like, I'm kind of frustrated and I look for help, but that anxiety that would normally stress me out is just not there. It's just a calm. And I think a lot of that comes from the mental benefits of working out, and for me specifically, running. It does more than just have the caloric value of burning calories. It does have a mental and emotional effect on your body as well. Here's another clip from that episode. And what we're talking about here is how average people become uncredible, and like what makes somebody uncredible is that they do all the normal stuff that everyone has to do in life, and then they go and do something else on the side. So this is me kind of talking about that with Greg.
And, there's a lot of people out there who are just doing the bare minimum. They're working, maybe they're caring for their family. That's it. It stops there. When you add to that a 5-mile run, I was thinking the other day, I'm trying, because of all the extra hours I'm working at work, I had to do a 4-mile run and I didn't complete it. I just didn't have it in me. And I thought, man, there was a day where getting a 1.5-mile run in, I would have been proud of myself. But now it's like, what was that? That was nothing, So it's how you face these challenges as they come at you, combined with the challenges that come with everyday life. That's where it goes from being not just average and maybe not considered credible or, credible like elite, but you're uncredible. And that's right. That's it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point as well, because, you hear it quite often, but it's kind of that being a bit more kind to yourself when you try and you're going to try and do a marathon or an ultra marathon or a half marathon or your first 5K, whatever it might be, and you've got to hit these targets and you've got to hit these things, and you've got the 5-mile run that day and you're exhausted. Yep. It's like, do you know what? Real world, it's going to happen, but the big thing is getting up the next day and doing it again. And that's why some of these people are so impressive, because they do that and they do that and they do that, and then they fail and then they do it again.
So, what we're talking about there is like, I'm sure as a professional athlete training to have the fastest marathon or the fastest half marathon, I'm sure that has its own stressors. Or if you're looking at ultras, trying to complete the ultra in the record time, whatever it is, I'm sure that has its own stress and challenges and difficulties. But, there's something to be said about trying to do a 12-hour shift, for example, like I've been doing, and then turning around and trying to run a 4-mile run and not making it. It's like, that's not a failure so much. And I love the fact that he talked about how sometimes we have to be a little bit easier on ourselves, because we look at Instagram, we look at running community in general. You watch ultra running. That's what I do right now. I'm watching ultra stuff, and I'll mention it in this next clip. I've been watching a lot of Killian Korth and reading up on him. And you look at that, and then you go out for your 4-mile run and you can't finish it, and you kind of just feel like you're a failure. But that doesn't account for the fact that you have all these other responsibilities that you're holding at the same time. So, like, in my mind, that being able to do that and putting in that work for your family, for your community, that is impressive, and that's uncredible, but that's incredible in its own way. And that's kind of what he and I talked about in this clip here. And this will be our third and final clip. as we look at this interview here. So here's a clip about talking about what average people do when they overcome the everyday life, the challenges that come with that. That's impressive too, and that's kind of what I talk about here.
What we try to do there for sure is find those people who had to do all of those things, and in some cases actually had to go a little bit further and overcome things like illness and injury or addiction and all those kind of things, and say, hey, look, do you know what? Those everyday people and those people with challenges, they can do incredible things as well. They might not have the highest VO2 max or a gold medal around their neck or have won UTMB, but they're actually, to go back to that word again, they are incredible as well.
Yeah, and I don't think what they're overcoming is any less impressive. Like if I could, I think a lot of us think that if you were to give me free gels and free electrolytes and say 24/7 train for a marathon, who knows what I could accomplish. But I do wonder if you took one of these elite athletes who has the record and said, hey, for the next 10 years, you've got to work and raise some kids and deal with the stress of marital challenges, of, all those conflicts that come with that. Oh, by the way, your car's going to break down, so you're going to have to fix that. I do wonder, would they be would it feel to them as difficult as what they're accomplishing is what I'm getting at. And I think that's what I look at. Is I look at what people are overcoming is, I don't want to say equally impressive, because maybe it's not, but it certainly is worth noting. And
that's kind of the whole point of Uncredible, right? Is there is this challenge that is life. It's hard to get up every day and go to work, a job you don't necessarily love, and put all your energy and resources into a community or a family, and just have that be the repetition of life day in and day out, and that struggle. Over time, that wears on everybody, every person, regardless of what their job is, regardless of what they're trying to accomplish. That is a challenge. And when any one of us who are, average, regular people decide to go and do the things that, whether it's running, in our case, running races and things like that. Some other person, it might be lifting weights. Someone else might be trying to chase something else, whatever it is. Another thing that I do is this podcast, writing articles. It could be anything, writing a book. It could be anything that they're trying to do on the side while effectively maintaining those other areas of life. That challenge to overcome is impressive. And there's no article in the paper for it. There's no medal at the finish line for that. There is, on the saddest, darkest side of it, there is a casket with flowers on it. We're gonna debut our last song on the Uncredible album called "Worth It," where it's gonna show that all this stuff being held together and facing that challenge head on, and then adding to it by choice. The races and the running that I do, and that a lot of the people on Craig's show, Running Tales, that they do. Since we're on the subject, Chad Williams as well, with all the people who with cerebral palsy who bear that burden, but also take it to another level, and they don't give up because of it, but they lean into it and they push forward. That is impressive. And again, I hesitate to say equally impressive as some of these other feats that we see these elite runners doing. But man, it is impressive in its own way, and in a way that I think is different than what your elite athlete has to endure. That's not to take away from that, but it is the challenge that we all face and we all must deal with. And those who take it on and then add to that pile, that is Uncredible. It really is. I would encourage you to check out Running Tales, Craig Lewis's podcast. I mean, he is if you like Uncredible and you like the message of average people doing uncredible, or average people doing amazing things, average people doing incredible things, his podcast is all runners, all amazing people, what you might call average, but they are, I mean, he really has done some great episodes. We talked about a couple of his friends in that podcast with the things they've overcome. And, you know, the other thing we talked about, which I didn't have a clip for it for this particular episode, but we talked about how those uncredible people, those average runners in his case, they inspire in a way that is different from what an elite athlete might do. Like, you might look at like a Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, the greatest of all time, Tom Brady, these types of people, Jimmy Johnson in the racing. You might look at them, they might inspire you to be great, but there's also this aspect of it inspires you to be great, but then it's also somewhat unrealistic. But what the average people, the uncredible people, do is they take the person who might be inspired by a Michael Jordan or you know Killian Korth or Rachel Endrick, and it takes that, like, it says, okay, it takes that, like, I'd love to be an ultra runner, because there are some people who look at them and go, I could never be that good. They're impressed by it and they would love to do it, but they don't believe they could do it. But then you take average people like myself, like Craig, and the people that he's interviewed and done podcasts with. Those people are the ones that, when somebody says, oh, I could never be as fast as or as good as, but I could do that, right? Like, we talked a lot about that in his podcast on that live stream, where it's like, I might not be able to run a 300-mile race as fast as Killian Korth, but I might be able to do a 50-mile. Like, I might be able to complete a 50-mile race. Like, that's something, right? And then I see somebody who is an average guy doing that. Like, maybe I see them on his podcast, and I go, oh, if that guy can do it, then maybe I can too. And that is that sort of inspiration. We talked about inspiration tiers, where it's like most of us, well, the vast majority of us will never be the greatest, but we can be greater. And that's what we should be striving towards. And then there's that nagging feeling inside of you that says, well, why should I do that? What would be the point of that? And then where guys and gals like us come in is we share and show the benefits of it, to where it's like, you might be here and you get to here, that might be just as overcoming whatever it takes you to go from here to here, might be just as impressive as what it takes a guy like Killian Korth to run a 300-mile race the fastest. You know, like, again, I hesitate to say just as impressive, but it's impressive in its own right, and it means something. And it's way better, listen, it's way better than being here and saying, I can't get here, so I'm just going to stay here and go backwards. And you will go backwards. As you age, you're going to lose, you're going to lose, you're going to lose. It's deteriorate. Rather than allowing that to happen, why not push forward and get the benefits of working out, eating right, being healthy, all those things. So there's a certain aspect to where being an average person doing uncredible things is in many ways more inspiring than, maybe not more in the grand scheme of things, but it makes it seem possible, where somebody might be inspired and never do anything. An average person might take that inspiration and go, oh, I could do it. I could do what they do, and take them to that next step in their process.
No quit, no quit, no quit. Building their world, while they talk about us, all they talk about us. Educated, experienced, still not credible. So we embraced it. Now we're uncredible.